Morning, everyone, and welcome to the early March meeting of the Western BCP Planning Committee. Firstly, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer to read out the housekeeping notice.
Thank you. Please note this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point, which is at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of this building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum. Mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you give us information about any apologies for absence and substitute members to replace them?
Certainly. So apologies have been received from Councillor John Challoner, Councillor Michelle Dower, Councillor Brian Hitchcock and Councillor Peter Sidaway. Substitute members today, we have Councillor Patrick Canavan for Councillor Dower and Councillor Toby Slade for Councillor Challoner.
Thank you. And before we go any further, I'll ask everybody who's involved in the committee and the proceedings to introduce themselves. My name is Marion Lepedvin. I'm Councillor for Newtown and Heatherlands, and I'm Chair of the Western Planning Committee.
Councillor Joe Clements, Penhill Ward, and Vice Chair of this committee.
Gillian Martin, Councillor for Boscombe West and member of the committee.
I'm Councillor Patrick Canavan. I'm a councillor in Boscombe, but here as a substitute for Councillor Dower.
Cameron Adams, Councillor for Kinson.
Councillor Simon McCormack, Burton and Grange Ward.
Councillor Chapman Law for Alderney and Bourne Valley.
Toby Slade, Musgrave and Stratton Park, here for Councillor Challoner.
I'm Kate Salmon, Councillor for Moordown.
Thank you, councillors. And we have various planning staff with us, planning officers. Some will be online. We'll introduce those when we come to it. But we have.
I'm Katie Harrington. I'm the Development Management Manager for the West.
Monika Kwiatkowska, I'm the DM, the team leader for the West team.
Thank you. And we've already heard from Jill Holyoke, who's our Democratic Services officer, who will be taking the minutes of the meeting and keeping us generally in order, which she does extremely well. So now we move on to declarations of interest. If any members of the committee have declarations of interest, will you declare it now? If you can always declare later if something occurs to you, but for now, I know we've got one.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be leaving the room for the first item as the applicant is known to me.
Okay. So we move on to item 4, which is confirmation of minutes of the last meeting on the 6th of February. Are you happy that we accept those as a true record of proceedings? I see lots of heads nodding, and I did hear one voice, so yes, we accept those. Thank you. So in every application, after the case officer has done the presentation, we'll hear any public speakers who've registered to speak, followed by ward councillors who may wish to speak. Then we'll move on to the committee. And I would just point out to the members of the public here, this is a meeting in public. It is not a public meeting. So the only people, apart from committee and officers, who should be speaking are those who have registered to speak. It's not a general discussion. So the Vice Chair is leaving us now for this first item. And we'll move on to item 6A, which is 48 Pierce Avenue. And the presentation, please.
Thank you. This is a outline application with landscaping reserved. Matters relating to access, appearance, layout and scale are considered.
Darren, can I just stop you? Two reasons. One, I didn't introduce you. This is the case officer, Darren Henry, who's speaking and on screen. But also, Councillor Canavan said he can't hear.
Okay, can you hear now?
I'm not sure whether it's anything to do with you, Darren. I think it's the system. Because we can hear you
Okay.
loud and clear in the room.
Should I wait then until?
Yes, can you just hold on for a moment?
Yeah.
Can you speak again, Darren?
Hello. How's everyone doing?
I don't think it's working still for one councillor. As I say, we can hear you perfectly well in the room. But he's working on headphones.
My technical assistant to turn the volume on.
Try again.
Try again, Darren.
Hi everyone. Everyone can hear me now.
Can you hear Patrick?
Hello.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
So we'll just call a short adjournment. Okay, Chair, we're back online.
Thank you. So the sound problems have been rectified, so we're ready to go. So I'll hand over again to Darren Henry to do his presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This is an outline application with landscaping reserved. Matters relating to access, appearance, layout and scale are to be considered under this application. The consent is sought for the demolition of the existing house and subdivision of the site into 3 plots, with 2 plots accommodating a detached 3-storey dwelling and the 3rd plot a 4-storey dwelling. Whilst it's unfortunate to lose the existing property, there will be a net gain of 2 houses. The application is presented to committee as Councillor Harman called in the application due to overdevelopment that presents an overbearing and negative visual aesthetic when viewed from the harbour side. In addition, 41 representations of objection have also been received. Next slide, please. The site is located on the south side of Pierce Avenue in what is predominantly a residential area. The site is also identified in the shoreline character areas SPG as being within the Parkstone Yacht Club, Pierce Avenue, the Blue Lagoon and Lilliput character area. This is an area consisting of mixed stretch of coast comprising either boating facilities or large houses set amongst trees. Development site is a large plot located between numbers 46 and 51 Pierce Avenue. The proposed site is located within an established residential locality within Parkstone ward of Poole and closely connected to good transport links with easy access into Poole and Bournemouth centres. Next slide, please. This gives an aerial view of the site here in the middle, with the harbour over here and the Pierce Avenue Road down here. Next slide, please. The red line application site falls within flood zone 1, the zone at least risk of coastal or fluvial flooding. However, the red line does not extend all the way down to the harbour side. The agent states this. The reason for this is that is purely choice, and it doesn't have to include the whole site. However, it should be noted that the interactive flood risk map from the level 1 and 2 strategic flood risk assessment shows the very edge of the rear garden located in flood zones 2 and 3, which can be seen here with the blue. Next slide, please. With regards to future flood risk, the extent of the flooding increases slightly into the garden area. In this case, the local lead flood authority were consulted and stated that we do not have any concerns relating to flood risk. It should also be noted that the previous withdrawn application, the Environment Agency stated that I have checked our records and we have assessed the above application and can confirm that we have no comments to make, as this consultation did not fall within a category which required consultation on. So in this regard, there is no flood risk within the red line of the application site, and nor is a sequential test required. Could you just go back to the red line application site, please? Yeah. So you can see here where the red line ends midway through the rear garden, and the flood risk area is by the edge of the shoreline here. Okay, thank you. Slide 6, please. This aerial photograph shows the context of the site, the wider area with the application site being here. And this is to the west of the application site over here. And next slide, please. And this photograph shows you the housing to the west of the application site, which are generally larger in mass and height and general scale. Next slide, please. This is plot 1, the smallest of the 3 dwellings. It's a 3-story dwelling with a basement. This is the front of the proposal. This is the east elevation facing number 54. The rear elevation facing the harbour side, and west elevation facing number 46. Next slide, please. Plot 2. This is obviously the middle dwelling of the 3. This is again a 3-story development, and plot 3 here is the largest of the 3, which is a 4-story development. Next slide, please. With regards to the plot sizes, the existing plot is approximately 45.7 meters wide, and it's considerably larger than any other plot along Pierce Avenue. Number 54 here is 15.19 meters, and on the other side here at number 46, the plot is 14.7 meters wide. With regards to plot 1, it measures 15.12 meters. Plot 2 measures 14.65 meters, and plot 3 measures 15.92 meters. So the subdivision of the plots is more in keeping, arguably, than the existing site, which is significantly larger than the proposed plots. Next slide, please. It's been noticeable over recent years that there has been a process of renewal occurring in this area, resulting in a variety of architectural styles and increased sizes. It is considered that the proposed dwellings fit into this evolving architecture, as the scale, modern design and form of architecture would be consistent with the changing pattern and layout of the area, and would be in keeping with the evolving character and appearance of the harbourside and street scene. Viewing from the harbour, the size and scale of the houses appear to sit comfortably and do not dominate the harbourside, as can be seen through on the next slide, please. As can be seen here, these large properties, some of them three stories and 4 stories in scale, similar widths, sizes to that which is proposed. There's a similar separation gaps between the plots as well, with regards to that proposed approximately 1.5 to 2 meters. Whilst it is noticed that the proposal would change the visual appearance of the existing site from a more traditional building to a more contemporary appearance, it does not preclude that the visual impact will therefore be negative. Indeed, given the surrounding area has evolved, it is arguable that the proposed development is more in keeping with the varying scales and designs associated with the newer development, and therefore the 3 proposed houses would not appear dominant or harm the visual residential character and visual appearance of Pierce Avenue or the harbourside. Next slide, please. This shows you the view from Pierce Avenue. Next slide, please. This is the proposed site plan, which sort of shows you the spaces between the plots, which were approximately 2 meters, and comparable with the existing plots in the area. Next slide, please. Again, as you can see here, plots have slight gaps to either side of the properties here, similar to those that to the proposal. Next slide, please. With regards to landscaping, this is a reserved matter. However, the applicant has submitted information in relation to arboricultural and biodiversity, which in this case, the trees to the front here are a group of TPOs. These are to remain in place and won't be impacted by the development. However, there will be a bay laurel that will be felled, along with a group of conifers to the side of the boundary here. There were 9 trees lost. However, 15 trees will also be planted, so there would be a net increase in trees. This would result also in a net gain in biodiversity above the minimum 10% required. Next slide, please. with regards to overlooking and privacy, it's considered that the neighbouring properties will not be impacted directly into any habitable room windows. Excuse me. However, the proposal does include balconies in the plots, which potentially could overlook the rear gardens into number 54 and 46 Pierce Avenue. Also, the plots themselves have potential to overlook each other's gardens. So in that case, it's a condition would be imposed to ensure that the sides of the balconies have privacy screening to mitigate any overlooking. Next slides, please. And next slide, please. Next slide. Going back to the proposed site plan, this shows you that the existing access will be retained, which leads into the free plots. There will be 2 ground level parking spaces, plus 4 spaces each in each of the basements. Also, there's provision for cycle storage here, and over here, and there will be additional storage within the basements, where the storage of waste containers will be contained as well. However, on collection days, the waste containers will be moved into this location, close by to the street for an easy pickup. Next slide, please. This slide shows you a view from the harbour, and there is some perforated coloured lines here, and the orange one indicates a previously refused, indicates what the applicant felt he could be achieved through a private approval application, which would allow for an additional 2 stories above the existing property. However, that application was refused, and the blue outline indicates the approval in 2008. The proposal is subject to the council's affordable housing policy, whereby the housing enabling officer has calculated the off-site commuted sum to be £270,000, which has been agreed by the applicant. Further contributions towards the Dorset Heathlands have also been agreed, as have towards Poole Harbour mitigation. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the proposed development represents an acceptable form of infill development that will increase the supply of large family housing in the borough. The impact on residential amenity, highway safety, trees, landscaping, ecology and flooding and contamination have been assessed to be appropriate. And the proposal will deliver a minimum of 10% biodiversity net gain and provide a significant contribution towards affordable housing. Furthermore, the council has a significant shortfall in its housing land provision. The proposal will have a net gain of 2 houses, making a modest contribution to the current housing situation in the borough. This carries significant weight, as does the affordable housing contribution. Therefore, having considered the appropriate development plan policy and other material considerations, it is recommended that the application is approved, subject to signing the Section 106 agreement and compliance with attached conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. So now we move on to the speakers in objection and support and the ward councillor. First of all, we have Mr. Simon Moore, who's objecting to the application. So if you could come and sit at the mic, press the right hand button to bring it on, and you have 5 minutes.
Right, good morning everybody. Right, so Simon Moore, I live at and own 46 Pierce Avenue, which is to the northwest of the site. Any page numbers that I refer to here are based on the PDF document for the agenda today that was posted to the council website. So page 21, item 18, states that the urban design officer, who gives expert professional opinion used by planning, objects due to the excessive scale, development of the site and impact on residential amenity, which doesn't adhere to local plan policy PP27. The proposal is for 3 very large and dominant similar looking houses with similar materials, which is not in keeping with the existing harbour and street scene, which is made up of a multitude of architectural styles, designs and sizes. Units 2 and 3 are 1 story higher than the surrounding properties, which is not in keeping with the ridgeline of the street scene and harbour scene. The 3 properties to the south would all be 1 story lower than the proposed units 2 and 3. The existing houses in the road, and they're all similar size plots, 15 metres wide, they vary in size, and the largest houses go up to about 7,000 to 8,000 square feet. Whereas this development has significantly larger houses. Plot 1 is 10,700 square foot, and plots 2 and 3, if you allow for the missing floor on plot 2, are roughly 12,500 square feet each. In comparison, my house is about 3,000 square foot, excluding the garage. So the proposed house is very dominant and dwarfs my property, which creates serious material loss of natural light and shadowing. My patio and the gardens either side will be completely overlooked due to the balconies located at the front and rear of Unit 1, which are in very close proximity to my house, giving myself and my family no privacy and a serious loss of amenity. The proposed plans in the agenda have elements that look incorrect, which should be checked before an informed decision can be made. One of them was on the slides that you've got here. So pages 19 and 25 state that units 1 and 2 will be 3 stories with a basement. Unit 3 will be 4 stories with a basement, whereas actually Unit 2 will be 4 stories with a basement rather than 3 stories as stated. The square metre sizes stated for Unit 2 throughout the document are incorrect, as they are missing the top floor, which is clearly shown in the elevation drawings on page 55, and the floor plans for that top floor are also missing for the 4th floor on page 55. Page 57 shows the outline, again one of the slides here, with the dotted yellow line, which were for previous permitted development to increase the size of the existing property by 2 stories. The developer also did an application for my property and my neighbour on the other side, 44 Pierce Avenue, to increase our properties by 2 stories without our permission, and all 3 applications were refused. That's right. Okay, and also on the outline drawing, it looks like the outline for 54 Pierce Avenue to the other side is actually drawn as being higher than it actually is, so that should be checked. Page 40, item 122, as part of the summary and recommendation states, furthermore, the council also has a significant shortfall in its provision for affordable housing in the area. With regards to this application, the applicant has agreed to pay £270,000 towards the off-site delivery of affordable housing, which also carries a significant weight in favour of the proposal. In response to that, The property was sold recently by Fortitudo, which you may have seen in the local and national press. So they will not be building out this development, so they will not be paying that £270,000. I've spoken to the new owners and they plan to do a different residential development. So a planning application will be submitted separately for that. And then on page 2 of the agenda pack, there's a page that says maintaining and promoting high standards of conduct. And in the bottom left, it points out a bias test. The common £270,000 of affordable housing, which carries a significant weight in favour of the proposal, I fear is a biased recommendation because it's showing motivation to raise affordable housing funds separately to actually judging the development on the merits of the application according to policy planning. I've used a professional planning consultant to go through my objections today, and I'd like to thank you for your time, and that's the end of my speech. Right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I did allow you a little bit over time, but only a little bit.
Thank you very much. Thanks. So do I press the left button?
You can leave it because there are other speakers coming now.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.
And now we have the applicant, Richard Carr.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, councillors and officers. Sorry. Clearly, this site was part of the Elms estate, and clearly that the numbers 48 to 52 of it demonstrate that it was always 3 plots. So I think that's very important. Your planning officer has said to you that the sizes of the plots 15.1, 14.6 and 15.9 are in keeping or slightly larger than some of the plots that already exist. The objector then made comment with regards to the sizes of the house. There are substantially larger houses than this further down the street. So it's not out of keeping whatsoever. And clearly we've worked for probably 16 months now on this application, and we've reduced the size of the house that's adjacent to the objector's house. I haven't really got an awful lot more to say than that, except that in 2008 there were 3 properties given planning permission for this on this site, and that I think it's in keeping with what's in the road, and the road has evolved, substantially over the last period of sort of 10-15 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have a written statement from Councillor Emily Harman, who is a ward councillor.
Okay, please accept my apologies that I am unable to make it in person today. This is due to circumstances beyond my control. I had wished to speak on this item in person. I am speaking against this planning application as per my original call-in, as I believe that shoehorning 3 enormous properties into what is currently 1 plot represents gross overdevelopment. In addition, this development, if granted today, would present as substantially overbearing on both the neighbourhood and harbour side. I have visited the site in person, meeting with residents to hear their concerns and see the impact that these proposed dwellings would have firsthand, and I am of the firm opinion that were these properties to be granted permission today, substantial additional harm would be caused to existing neighbouring properties due to the extreme close proximity of the dwellings, resulting in a lack of privacy. I would also like the committee to consider the impact of the excessive amount of fenestration on each property. I would argue that there is likely to be an unacceptable amount of artificial light intrusion back onto the harbour, a site of special scientific interest and home to an abundance of wildlife. Allowing excessive development on an already compact plot that will negatively affect both neighbouring properties and the harbour side aesthetic would, in my view, be unforgivable. There is no doubt that there are some very large and unique properties that already benefit from the beautiful views afforded from this piece of shoreline. However, they are individual and characterful in appearance and well spaced apart so as not appear cramped. The 3 proposed properties do not reflect the existing order of things. Instead, they strike as being financially opportunistic, squashing too much into too little space. I do not object to the development of this plot in general, neither do many of the residents in the area. However, I would like to see proposals that seek to reflect the existing character of the area and that sensitively address both the residents and the urban design team's concerns. The plans as presented do not do this.
Thank you. So now we move on to questions from members of the committee about what you've heard, what you've read, what you've seen. Questions for clarification. This is not debate. We move on to that later. Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. I have quite a few. I don't want to hog the discussion. I'll ask a couple and then you can tell me to stop if you want.
You may be asking questions that others have in mind, we shall see.
Let's see how we go. My first question was, because I don't see it anywhere in the report, I just would like to know the date of the existing property, because I find that I'd like to understand that, and I don't understand it from the report. Can I also just confirm whether or not the site is within the Poole town centre boundary or in the rest of Poole area in terms of its affordable housing contribution? Because again, forgive me if I've missed it, but I can't see that actually stated in the report. So those are my first two questions. Do you want me to carry on? I've got a couple more.
Let's get answers to those two, or else we'll forget what the word. Now I don't know who can answer these, whether it's the case officer or the people on my right.
Darren.
Mr. Henry.
Hello, Chair. Regards to the age of the existing property, I can't answer that, unfortunately. I'm not sure. With regards to it's not within the Poole town centre.
So okay.
Thank you. Right. One or two more?
Yes. So then, leading on from that second question, if it's in the rest of Poole, I understand that the contribution that is required through planning policy is at 40%. And can I just check that 270,000 contribution represents 40%, because that does feel not like it doesn't
I'll
match.
answer what I think is correct, but the officers will put me right if I'm not. It's on properties more than an application for more than 10 properties. This is only 3. Is it not?
Yeah, so it's for properties more than
The size is the floor area, which is why this policy does apply, because of the floor area of these 3 substantial properties. So is that 270,000 anywhere near to 40%?
When it's below a certain amount of developments, it's more practical to seek a off-site commuted sun rather than provision on-site. Generally, 40% indicates provision of on-site affordable housing units. In this case, it's more practical to seek a financial contribution, in which our housing enabling officer calculated the sum using a standard formula.
Okay, thank you.
Right, let's have one more and then I'll open it to see if anyone else has got questions. If not, we'll come back to you.
All right, my next one is, could I ask, because I'm not clear that it's fully covered in the report. I don't know if we've got someone from the highways here, but I wanted to get a bit more commentary on the over provision of parking in relation to the SPD. It is clearly stated in the report that the SPD, the level of parking for these properties, according to our SPD, is 2 spaces per property. And it is clearly stated in the report that this application has 6 spaces per property. But what's then not given is any commentary on that from the highways team. They talk about access and street parking and things like that, but not the over provision of parking spaces. So I feel like that is something that's actually missing.
Right, if Mr. Henry, can you answer that one?
Yes. There is a minimum requirement of parking spaces. There's no maximum. There is the provision of 2 are at ground level. The other remaining spaces are in the basement, 4 in each basement. And the highways officers were consulted and had no issues with the amount of provision because it met the minimum requirement.
Okay. I have more to say on that, but I'll leave that for the debate. And I'll let other people speak if you like.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Moore stated that there was. So let's read it. Forgive my ignorance. In Section 106, once it's signed, we've got this £270,000 allocation. Is there any doubt that once it's signed, we won't get that should the site be sold on?
I think we're going to get an answer.
Yep. So the Section 106 it runs with the land. It doesn't run with the current owner. So if the site gets sold on and they wish to implement, then they will still be obliged to pay that contribution.
But if they submit other plans, new plans,
then the whole process
starts again. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah. I didn't see in the I haven't seen in the documents, but have we got any sort of inkling of what the sea view side of the property will look like in comparison alongside the adjacent properties? I've been looking and I can't really see anything in the papers, and sort of Google Maps is not giving me an awful lot either. Just sort of wondered if you could enlighten me on that one.
Yes, I must admit I haven't seen that either, and wondered. I don't know whether there's one available. Something we haven't actually had in the paperwork. I think it'll be. It's not. It certainly isn't in the paperwork.
So there's that, but it wasn't showing us in comparison to it's on. Yeah, it's not showing us. So go back again. That one there, but it's not really showing us. Maybe it is actually. And also on that one, is there? Can we see those lines are on previous approvals, but the doesn't show us what the existing property looks like.
The very faint purple line, I believe, is the existing property. I know it's not very clear.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, I can see that now. Okay.
Okay. Oh, one more.
One last one. Why is the cycle parking external and not in the basement?
There is provision in the basement as well.
Okay, thank you.
You can choose, yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, Councillor Martin.
Just a small point, but on I don't know which plot number it is, but it's on page 55. It's showing the 4 bedrooms in the floor plan, but actually there's an ensuite to the 2 front bedrooms, but there's no bathroom for the 2 front bedrooms. Whereas on page 54, it's showing us 3 bedrooms and they're all en suite. So that to me just seems a bit sort of strange that you've got, like. Because in the middle of the night, if you've got a guest staying or like your kids living in with you wouldn't want them traipsing through your bedroom to go and use the toilet in the night. I just wondered why it's been planned in that way. It's if when it's actually being built, they'll sort of think actually we'll make it 3 bedrooms with an ensuite rather than like on page 54. What's that one? That's 3 bedrooms with 3 en suites. But on my page 55 of the floor plans, which I don't know which plot number it is, it's showing us 4 bedrooms on that top floor. But there's no bathroom provision for the 2 front bedrooms.
Yes. Can anyone provide an answer to that one? Mr. Henry?
It's their personal preference that they've done the layout that way. Could you increase the size of the plans on the?
Can I zoom in? No, unfortunately.
So which plot you're saying that doesn't have the bath?
It's on page 55. I can't tell which plot it is. I really can't tell. It's not labelled on the plans I've got.
It is, it's two.
It's two. It's two.
I
Then,
think, isn't it? There's a two on the left-hand plan. Is that plot two?
Oh,
Yeah, it's plot
might
two.
do.
Master condition.
Okay.
Or qualification, maybe we have it.
Because it won't be.
Do you want us?
true.
Is this relevant to this?
Yeah, that's
item?
the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that it's relevant because planning deals with the external and not really the internal layout. So I don't really see how this is relevant.
Well, I think it is
Yeah.
relevant because they're telling us they're building a 4-bedroom. Then you know what I mean? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, there seems to be a problem with the plans on this compared to the elevations, which were brought up a bit earlier. Dan, can you clarify? Darren, can you clarify what plans are? Maybe we need to address this through.
Okay. Plot two is 3 stories. The if you go to the plot 2 elevations.
So which
So if you can see here that it does seem to have an appearance of an additional elevation here with your ground, first and second. However, this top part, there's no floor there. So the floor is here and it goes all the way up to here from floor to ceiling. So there is no actual floor level here.
Okay, it's vaulted.
Because the height of the building of the floor here doesn't is out of it wouldn't meet building regulation heights to have a floor. So it's just going to be a high floor to ceiling. Does that make sense?
I think we've got some more information coming.
It's Chair, I just wanted to double check. There's an issue with no provision of a bathroom or bathrooms, 2 bedrooms. I think, as the case officer stated, it's a personal preference. It can be internally altered in the future, as if with any other dwelling. So if a new owner would prefer to have a bathroom, they could potentially put one in.
Yeah.
In terms of the that additional element, which is obviously a vaulted ceiling, so it doesn't have accommodation. If there's any concerns about the height and potential accommodation being included, we can support that with condition, making sure that there's no further accommodation, level of accommodation provided. So there won't be additional floor space created within that dwelling, that unit 2, which would then obviously restrict the amount of development on site.
Yeah. Yeah, just
Thank
a
you.
point, yeah.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Martin, then I'll come back to Councillor Salmon.
Just a quick one. There's between this the existing property and 54, which looks like flats to me when I went there. There's a little pathway down to the shore. Is that definitely going to be retained? Because I think that's important. It's a public amenity.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really, really important, I think. I lived in that area during lockdown actually, and so I made good use of that because I often used to walk along there and walk down to the water. But you couldn't see Brownsea Island last night, by the way, because of the fog. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Salmon.
Yes, thank you. So I just had one other question, which was something that came out of Councillor Harmon's statement. She referred to the potential negative effects of a lot of light pollution on the harbour, and that's not something that I've seen addressed in the report. So I am sorry to ask a technical question, but because it's come out of someone else's statement, that's why I know we should usually ask these ahead of time, but I didn't. It didn't cross my mind until I heard that. So is it possible to comment on whether that's been investigated? Okay, thanks.
We've got a comment coming from the officer.
The applicant submitted a ecological report, which was reviewed by our biodiversity officer, who had no issues with any impact on with regards to bats or anything like that. Environmental health made no comments regarding light pollution.
We've got some more information.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. In terms of the light pollution, I did ask the biodiversity officer this morning to actually look at the submission of Councillor Harmon's concerns, and the advice I've received is that it can be seen from both ways, and there's evidence to support both ways. However, in this particular location and this site, light actually can be good for wading birds, as it makes it easier for those birds to see at night and feed at night once they do this. However, it could be equally bad for bats, which may be in the area. However, in this situation, the biodiversity officer also advised that it would be harmful if the area wasn't lit at all. Therefore, that kind of impact on bats would be harmful, and he would object. In case of the area as it is right now, where lighting is already present, he raises no concerns in terms of any light pollution to any protected habitat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? No, so we'll move on to the debate. So this application is recommended for approval. I need to ask you for your views on this. Councillor Salmon.
Sorry. Okay, I'm going to come back to this parking thing because, and I'm going to read a paragraph from our SPD, if I may.
Sorry, I'm just.
Amendment sheet.
Ah.
We've got additional. Sorry, apologies. Just for to make sure that members are all clear that there is an amendment sheet with some additional conditions on there and some additional information, including flooding and character and housing mix. New conditions include timing reserve matter submission, obscure glazing on balconies, adaptive and accessible condition, removal of PD rights for extensions and outbuildings, and that the basement shall remain uninhabitable.
Okay, have you still got things to say? Yeah, please do.
Okay, so around the parking, and I'd like to read a short paragraph from the SPD under the section purpose of the document. It says at paragraph 1.2.4, all car parking figures in this SPD, I've added those two words, are presented as optimums, whereas cycle figures are considered as minimum levels. This is to encourage smart travel choices and reduce dependency on the private car. So I'm afraid I disagree with the case officer when he said that car parking is a minimum. It is explicitly not a minimum. This is a massive over provision of car parking, and therefore it's a contravention of the SPD. So I'm sorry, I think it's a really important point that I wanted to make. I have some other points as well around the conditions that are there, and I have looked at the amendment and I've checked that then the addendum and I've checked that they're not corrected. The condition on the bat licence is not written clearly, needs to be looked at again. It just isn't comprehensible, so I'm worried that that wouldn't be able to be enforced because there's just too many mistakes for it's not in clear English. Condition 6.
Thank you.
And condition 15 about renewable energy, it's got some wrong words in it. It refers to 20%, which I don't think is the correct percentage, and it refers to flats, and this isn't a flatted development. So those two conditions do need to be corrected. We can't approve this application with those conditions because they're just incorrect. Thanks.
Councillor Martin.
Just thinking that the house that's been pulled down is actually due to be demolished is actually a beautiful house. But I think equally well, I think these 3 houses that are going to replace it, I'm looking at the plans and they would be, I can imagine would be really lovely to live in. I don't think the parking is an issue because the ones that I think if people were living there day to day, you would park on the street level. No, because to get to the basement parking, it's an underground car lift. And I can't imagine that in reality people will use that every day. I know I wouldn't. It's just such a faff to put your car in the car lift, get down and then park it. I would imagine that what it will end up being used as is storage. So I haven't really got a problem with the extra, sorry, Councillor Salmon, but I haven't got a problem with the parking for that reason. You know, it's not practical. Yeah, but I would be in favour of this development. I think it's also going to increase our housing stock by 2, which we've got to do, which is saving the green belt. So I think it's really lovely. I think it'll provide housing for 3 families as opposed to 1, which is I think really important as well. And it's just very comfortable housing by the looks of it.
So a quick one from Councillor Salmon and then Councillor Adams.
I think the issue is around what our job here is to look at what planning policy says and to ensure that applications are complying with it. And this is not complying with planning policy. You may be right that people might not choose to use those basements for parking, but they are overtly, explicitly stated as providing parking within this application. Perhaps one thing that could be looked at, and I don't know, but the officers will say if this is possible, would be conditioning that those basements aren't used for parking, and that would bring it in line with the SPD. But at the moment, as stands, which is always we're told we've got to assess the application as it's brought to us, it's being overtly presented as 6 parking spaces per house, which is a 200% over provision of parking. So, and that's just about us complying with policy, which is our role here. It's not our role to say, well, I'd use it for this or I'd use it for that. Okay.
Okay. Monica.
Thank you. Chair, I just wanted to perhaps give some comfort. So obviously, the SPD, parking SPD, sets out the minimum requirements which this development meets. As with any other layout inside the development, inside the building, it can be adjusted at some point in the future, and it's the personal preference of whoever's designing the dwellings to have more. As far as I understand, the transportation officer did not consider the over provision as harmful, and from a planning perspective, during the assessment, the harm needs to be identified in terms of identifying issues and therefore making sure in the planning balance that we actually balance that against any positives and benefits arising from this development. And whilst the harm was not identified, in any case, if you choose to find it at this stage, I would consider, and I would urge you to consider planning balance and in terms of tilting it towards ensuring that the benefits are also recognised, and then looking at housing provision and other benefits arising from this scheme against any harm you may find in it. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
So, in general, I agree with Councillor Martin. If she was making a proposal, I would second it with the caveat of making the changes to the wordings of the recommendations that Councillor Salmon very well pointed out, because I didn't read them probably quite in the detail or didn't notice it quite as she should. On the parking point, I accept it's not the optimum amount of parking, but we quite often have applications that are suboptimal in one way or another, and it happens to be the case that this suboptimal measure of extra parking would probably address, because I think residents would likely be more concerned if there was a lot more parking on the road as a result of the 3 extra flats, and they would rightly kick off with all the time we deal with antisocial parking, people having too many cars. So I think it's a welcome suboptimal sort of measure. On the affordable housing, it doesn't change how I treat the application. However, I will point out time and time again, we've approved massive blocks of dozens of flats with no affordable housing contribution because they haven't met the viability assessment. So I think it's quite welcome, even if it's not something that would affect my judgment overall. And I think they are very nice properties. We do have a housing shortage. We've obviously got to apply the tilted balance in favour of development for these things. So I would, on that basis, I'd be happy to support it. But That's my view.
So, Councillor Martin, were you making a proposal?
Yes, I'm making a proposal.
So it's been proposed and now seconded by Councillor Adams. Any more comments from anybody? No? Okay, we'll put it to the vote then.
Chair, can I just come in and check in terms of the wording for what's been proposed? That would be subject to delegated authority being given to the head of planning to amend the wording of conditions 6 and 15 to be appropriate to this development.
And the condition for most subdivision floors,
Okay. And a condition to not subdivide floors.
including the amendments for knowledge.
Yeah. Lovely.
Okay, so the recommendation is that we approve. We've had a motion and a second of the motion that we should approve. If you wish to approve, vote now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
If you wish to vote against, vote now.
1.
And I think that means there's no abstentions. Okay, so that application is approved. Thank you, everybody. And we'll be moving on to this 6B in a minute. So welcome back to the Western BCP Planning Committee. We have the composition of the committee has slightly changed because we now have the Vice Chair, Councillor Joe Clements, back with us, but Councillor Simon McCormack has had to leave. So we move on to item 6B, which is accommodation at St Michael's Hotel in St Michael's Road in Bournemouth. And the case officer is Piotr Kulik, who is online. So over to you now, please, Mr. Kulik.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me today?
You're fairly quiet.
Okay.
Oh, that's better.
Oh, it's better now. Yeah, because might be something to do with my headphones. All right. Okay, so just leave it as it is. All right.
Can you hang on a bit, because Councillor Canavan is using headphones and he couldn't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
You're quiet even for the room. So
okay, so I'll have to let me just try the other way around as last 2 weeks ago. It's better.
Yes.
Oh yes, much. Yes, and Councillor Canavan can hear you. So right, over to you.
Okay, let me just acknowledge it. Can you see that? Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. So today we've got an old St Michael's Hotel site, and the proposal is for outline permission to demolish the existing building and to erect 44 flats with associated bin cycle storage. The only reserve matter is landscaping in case of this application. Also, this application has been called in by the Councillor De Orton Gibson, who supports redevelopment of the site, where the officers recommended planning refusal. In terms of the location of the site, the application site consists of large three-story buildings situated within the West Cliff and Pool Hill conservation area, and its lawful use is a hotel. The property occupies a prominent corner location facing St Michael's Road and Purbeck Road. This is we can see some photos taken in August 2022 showing the application site itself. In recent times, the property has been used as an authorised house of multiple occupation. The scale and appearance of the buildings within this setting, it's fairly consistent and is a good example of historic evolution of this part of Bournemouth. The existing property, although it's not listed, has been identified within the emerging Westcliff and Pool Hill Conservation Area appraisal as a positive building, which makes a positive contribution to the conservation area. Also, as noted already, the existing building sits within prominent location and forms part of a line of historic Victorian buildings. In next slides, I will show a few more photos just to show how the site changed. Just to basically make some reference to the members' support. So this is so we can see existing site photos taken in August 2022. So those photos are more recent ones. The bottom one to the left, it's been taken, I think, in October last year, and the right hand side one is been taken probably a few days ago. So we can see how the site setting's been changed. It's a vacant site. Nothing's been done there for years. Therefore, we've got members' support to actually improve the site itself. Again, we can see some existing site photos by now showing the rear of the site. The top left-hand side photo shows a fairly recent state of the application side. You cannot access the rear of the site now, so therefore the other photos been taken again probably a year and a half ago, but I would say the rear setting it's fairly similar, and again it's a vacant site and which basically needs some form of redevelopment. In terms of existing buildings, so we can see the front elevation shows a 3-story building. Then we have 4 stories to rear. And moving to proposed elevation plans, although the council's urban design officer did not object the principle of the scale and massing of the building, there's associated objection towards the design features, which were objected by both conservation officer and Historic England. So officers consider that although the design of the proposed building could be found acceptable in a different location, in contrast to the existing setting of the conservation area, design features of the proposed replacement building would disturb the build rhythm and in this part of the conservation area. So as noted already, both conservation officer and Historic England object the principle of the loss of this positive building, which is basically the objection is towards the total loss of this building, which would result in unjustified harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area. And also it is considered that the design as proposed of the replacement building would not match the design quality of what is being lost, and therefore failing to preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. So in summary, in terms of design, the proposed design would not reflect the traditional appearance and authentic details which can be found within this part of the conservation area. Again, just to show the street scene plans, we can say that the scale and height of this building, it's probably fairly acceptable and would match the adjacent buildings, but as noted already, the design features as well as the overall principle of the total loss of this positive building is not acceptable by officers and consultants, which includes Heritage Officer and Historic England. Just to make a note, the application site itself shows excessive planning history, where there were few applications for the proposal of the loss of the existing building, and all those applications being objected and refused by the local planning authority. There's one previous agreement towards the development of the site, which consisted of a conversion of the existing building to build 31 flats, and actually officers consider that such proposal will be the most acceptable option for this site to move any redevelopment of this building, which actually requires some works to actually bring it back to its normal use. So with the previously agreed conversion scheme, it is considered that the current application is not justified, and any small contribution, which is in form of 13 additional flats when comparing to this 31 flats already approved by the local authority, it would not basically outweigh the harm of the conservation area and the loss of the positive building. Just to move to the proposed schedule of accommodation of the current scheme, there will be mostly 1-bed and studio flats, which form approximately 70% of the overall number of units on site. Obviously, there is a preference within local authority towards 2-bedroom plus units. However, as it states right now, and within the local planning policy, there is no strict number which required certain number of units. Therefore, the prominent number of 1-bed units has not been objected by officers, and therefore it does not form another refusal reason on this application. In terms of the site layout, the application would form development without any car parking provision, because it's set within parking zone A, which is a sustainable location, which will not require parking provision on car parking provision on site. However, there will be provided cycle parking spaces within the lower ground floor level, as well as acceptable bin store provision on site. Just to summarise, the proposed scheme would contribute to the need for new housing, delivering 44 additional flats. However, the National Planning Policy Framework places great weight on the conservation of heritage assets. Therefore, the proposed works would result in considerable harm to the special interest of the conservation area due to loss of a positive building, and therefore would not enhance or better reveal the significance of the existing conservation area. As such, officer's recommendation is planning refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kulik. We have again 3 speakers. First of all, in objection, Andrew Ahmed. As before, 5 minutes is available for you.
I won't take that long. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm very grateful. I'm attached to this building, and I totally object to an asset in a conservation area being destroyed, which it has been, for financial gain, and this has gone on for quite a number of years now. I fully support the heritage officer who says that planning guidelines clearly state that destroying a property should not be looked at and be taken into consideration when you're making a judgment on this. The freeholder has been granted permission to build 31 flats to repurpose the plot. As you know, the minute it was granted, he didn't want it anymore. It wasn't viable, he said. So, I think it's quite clear what the situation is. If you go on St Michael's Road now, there's a sign outside from a company called Luxury and Prestige. So the plot is up for sale. And another concern would be servicing this building. St Michael's Road is a very narrow road with parking on both sides, and is often a nightmare at the moment with illegal parking. 44 flats being built with no parking, though it does fit in, the Zone A, would be a dreadful, mistake, because, we have problems at the moment. Sometimes we can't even get bins emptied because of illegal parking. But that's what, I want to say, and thank you for giving me the time to address you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, on behalf of the applicant, we have Chris Meal.
Good morning, members. My name is Chris Meal, and I'm an Associate Director at Pure Town Planning, and I'm here speaking in support of the proposal on behalf of the applicant, Aram Developments. I'm an RTPI Chartered Town Planner with over 10 years of experience, which includes a 2-year period working as a planning inspector. The application before you today has been recommended for refusal by your officers, and I wish to outline the main considerations why I feel that members should overturn this recommendation and grant permission for the scheme. The application is before you today following a call-in request from Ward Councillor Orton Gibson, who feels that the officer's recommendation fails to recognise the regeneration benefits of the proposal and the blight on the community that the current building represents. The principal issue for members to consider relates to the level of harm that would be caused to the West Cliff and Pool Hill conservation area by the demolition of the existing building, and whether this harm is outweighed by the public benefits of the scheme. As you've heard, the building has been vacant for many years and it's in a very poor state of disrepair. It's a hotspot for crime and antisocial behaviour, which is an issue of great concern to the local community and business operators. Dorset Police are wholly supportive of the planning application, and they state in their consultation response that this site is in desperate need of redevelopment to reduce its attraction to rough sleepers and drug users. There have been many previous attempts to redevelop the site, none of which have come to fruition. The most recent planning permission from 2019 to convert the building into 31 flats was commercially unviable and it lapsed in 2022. That scheme represented the maximum number of units that could be achieved at the site with a conversion, and it still remained unprofitable. Therefore, the existing building cannot be brought back into a viable use. Since then, the condition of the building has continued to decline, and the current proposal represents the last opportunity for this site to be redeveloped. If the application is refused, the site will remain vacant and it will continue to be a blight on the local area, which will be of significant detriment to the local community, and I'm concerned that it may also stymie other regeneration projects in the local area because investors could be reluctant to regenerate other sites nearby. The council have permitted the development of other Victorian hotel buildings within the conservation area, such as the former Wessex Hotel and Linden Court Hotel, and these regeneration projects have been a resounding success and show what can be achieved where high quality new development is brought forward. In this case, the bulk, scale, massing and external appearance of the proposed development has been carefully considered to ensure that the scheme would be in keeping with the special character and appearance of the conservation area. The new building has been designed to appear as two Victorian mansion blocks with a traditional design and material palette utilised throughout, which includes period features such as bay windows, stone headers and decorative brickwork. Members can use conditions to secure a high quality approach related to materials and detailing. The council's urban design officer has no objection to the plans, noting in her comments that the design, scale and sizing of the proposed works is acceptable in principle, and that the revised scheme shows scale and articulation that is a reasonable response to the street scene. I share this position. In conclusion, whilst the loss of the building is regrettable in heritage terms, it is necessary to facilitate the redevelopment of the application site. Previous attempts to convert the building into residential use have failed on viability grounds, and a new build scheme is the only option to see this site brought back into use. A new development would provide much needed housing in a sustainable town centre location at a time when the council has a substantial housing land supply deficit of only 1.6 years, and it would also act as a catalyst for the regeneration of the wider area. In my opinion, these substantial public benefits outweigh the loss of this building. For these reasons, I implore you to use your powers today to overturn the officer recommendation and vote in favour of granting permission for the proposal, which should be delegated to the head of planning for approval following the conclusion of discussion on section 106 matters. For those of you who are unsure, I would encourage you to defer today to allow you to do a site visit so you can gauge the poor condition of the building for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mail. And now we have the ward councillor who called the application in, Councillor David Doughton Gibson.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't want to be accused of teaching the planning committee to know their jobs, but I've often heard in my BDC role that we can always control what's built on that site by using planning. I would just like to say that we can't control what's built. We can control what's not built. And this is really the history of St Michael's. We've had planning applications, but still nothing gets built. We did have the one in 2019 that's already been referenced. I think the planning officer's initial picture, nice sunny day, it actually looked quite good. I barely recognised the place, although I did realise it was an older photo because, as his latter one showed, it's now all boarded up. That's a good photo. Thank you for putting that up. You'll see that it's at the very end of the terrace, and whilst it matches all the buildings to the right, it doesn't match the buildings to the left in the same way. And those buildings are also set a long way back. So actually, if this building was demolished, all you would do is just lose the ugly end of the terrace and you wouldn't affect the rest. It's not in the middle of a row or anything, which would be much more of an eyesore. The Westcliff area is a key part of our tourist area, with tourism, of course, being a major economic factor for the Bournemouth-based area. But it's also part of, as was referenced by the applicant's representative, part of a major police intensive work called Clear Hold Build. So this has been going on for about, I think, 6 months now, which targets illegal activity. They have, for example, closed down 3 county lines drugs bases in this immediate area. The important thing about Clear Hold Build is it's the job of the police to get rid of the drug dealers and to do the hold element, and effectively it then becomes the council's job to change that environment to ensure that we build back something different so that we don't just get those problems back again. The appearance of the building is hugely detrimental to the appearance. I had to smile when I saw the prestige sign up for sale. I couldn't help but smile and wasn't quite sure why somebody thought that. The consented scheme is not viable. There's a lot of practical issues around it. The lower ground floor elements, for example, would never, or would be very expensive to try and tank them, make them waterproof because they're below ground, etc. If you start with a new building, it becomes much more viable. The cost increase post-COVID, because the consent was before COVID, has effectively meant that's no longer viable. The detrimental effect of such a substantial derelict property, and it's over many years. I mean, it's been not used for something like 15 years and just deteriorating all the time. In one of our core tourism areas, I think far outweighs the heritage issues in planning terms. As I say, at the end of the block, it would be easy to replace it. And this will only get worse as from the local tourism offer point of view. Do we really want to conserve that building on the right? And even the paintwork on the brick, you will notice between the first picture and those pictures, you'll see how much this building is deteriorating. It's just sitting empty and decaying with nothing economic on the site. We could, as a council, CPO it and then develop it into 31 flats at a massive loss. But we all know that as a council, we're never going to do that. We haven't got the funding. Remember too that we do need additional homes. Of course, the local plan is likely now to require us to have to provide 3,000 additional homes, and so we will be clamouring for all the sites we can possibly get. I suspect we may have to. We know we've got to look at the local plan, but I suspect we'll have to look at a number of policies. One of them, I think, we may need to look at, for example, in town centre, will be the height of buildings, because we can't go outwards in Bournemouth. We're locked in by towns, seas, etc. And so I think planning policy will need to reflect that. The challenges that this property presents to the immediate area must be addressed. The planning application would achieve that. We may not want exactly what's applied for, and I'd be the first to admit it's not a perfect solution, but anything has got to be better than what we currently have. The effect of redevelopment on this site would act as an extremely positive catalyst to the wider area and give the opportunity for the locality to justify its designation as a tourism area, whilst helping drive out that criminal activity through the building being actively used by residents and more residents moving in and around that area. We can't guarantee that this new plan will get built, and this new plan may not be 100% what we want, but we know the existing plans are not getting built, and the existing site is a significant issue in the area. So this application is the only option we have at the moment for improving the area and helping the police in Clearhold build. Yes, it may be a conservation area, but do we really want to conserve what is there? Or do we want to replace it with something that will be likely more attractive, likely to have a better energy performance rating, and provides homes for local people? Thank you.
Thank you. And again, you overran slightly, but I'll let you finish. So we come now to questions from members, and you've probably noticed that someone who's joined us, Ruth Povey from the Heritage team, should heritage issues be among the questions, she can help us out. I don't know whether there's anything you want to say at this stage before we start.
Oh, I've probably got lots. Oh, put the microphone on. I've probably got lots I could say, but do you want me to fire away, or would you like to ask questions?
Let's wait for questions first, and maybe at the end, if there are issues that haven't come up that you think are essential. So, questions. Councillor Adams.
So in paragraph 215 of the National Planning Policy Framework, it says when a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of the designated heritage asset, which I think is what is said in the officer's report. This harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including where appropriate, securing its optimal use. So what's, I accept you've got an objection, but what's the balance with the benefits as laid out by Councillor Dalton Gibson for the police side, the regeneration aspect? Have you considered that, and why have you come the way you? I accept it's a loss of a building, but I just wanted to know your view on why you've come to the view you have overall, given the concerns raised by others about not doing anything with it.
Yes, I think it would be probably best option to move to this question to Ruth. But as a planning officer, so obviously we've done our assessment, we've done our best. You know, I'm not going to lie. Since August last year, we secured several things which help us to remove other refusal reasons. But in general terms, as you can read within the officer's report, the loss of the positive building, referring to certain paragraphs within NPPF, is not acceptable, and that's mainly the only refusal reason which cannot be outweighed by other benefits of the scheme.
Thank you. Do you want to add something?
Just to add to that, I think although we're looking at less than substantial harm, it's a very high level within less than substantial harm. So that although there are benefits arising, I would agree with Piotr that the benefits here don't outweigh the harm. That's the conclusion in weighing it up.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Martin.
I might sound a bit thick, but why is that a heritage building? It looks like an eyesore. It's it's not even that you could show people around as a museum piece. It's just a useless pile of bricks, really.
For me,
that is quite a fundamental question. So I think we do need the answers to that.
I accept it's really not looking its best, is it? At the moment, it's looking rather sorry for itself. But this is part of the early development of Bournemouth, so it's a part of the Westcliff area. We've got it's a development of part of the seaside resort. We've got at one end of St Michael's Road to the south, you've got the slightly more spacious plots, some detached, then you move into semis, and here you're moving towards the terraces, the higher density. As you go round the corner, around the island there towards Ball Hill, it's even denser, perhaps some more service accommodation and commercial buildings. But here, you kind of got an aspirational suburb, part of the history of Bournemouth. I know it's looking sorry for itself, but it is a late Victorian villa. Well, it's a pair of them, a really large site here. It's got all those features that ties in with the rest of the road and beyond, the bay windows and so on. It's even got some sashes and so on left. It's got those canted bays. It's of brick. It just sits so comfortably in the street scene, and it's got features echoing its neighbours. So it is. A conservation area is a sum of all its buildings and elements within it. It's an area of a character and appearance that the local planning authority are under a duty to preserve and enhance. So that's our bottom line under the Planning Act. So I've waffled on a bit, but I hope that helps. If there's anything else you want me to clarify, please do.
Okay. Any more questions? Right. We move on to debate then. We have an officer recommendation to refuse. I want to hear views. Councillor Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself in a bit of difficulty with this. I don't buy that heritage argument again at all. In a different world, we'd CPO it, knock it down and start again. It's an eyesore. However, I think the points that have been raised by the planning office in terms of the design, I find more compelling, because I don't find that design that's in this application particularly compelling. I think it's trying to get too many units of accommodation into a very small space. The over provision of one bedroom flats really concerns me a lot. So I'm more persuaded by the design argument than I am by the heritage argument. The other thing is I really do get frustrated when developers argue about viability. It annoys me intensely. I personally wouldn't object if it went a floor higher, if that impacted on the viability of making more two-bedroom accommodation on that site. But obviously we have to consider the application that's in front of us. We're talking about a lot of well, seemingly quite small one-bedroom flats, and as much as I would like to see some redevelopment and regeneration on that site, I am worried and concerned about those aspects of the design that have been highlighted by the planning officer, which would sway me, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cammons.
Thank you, Chair. I am actually a huge supporter of heritage conservation. I love old buildings. But in this particular case, I think we have to be practical, because as much as it probably was a very beautiful building in its time, it has been neglected, it would appear, or it has been vacant for a number of years and therefore has fallen into disrepair. And looking at the outside of the building, which is pretty dreadful, you can guess that perhaps the inside will be equally as dreadful. And in terms of redeveloping a building like this, it isn't at all viable, because it often it's a fact that it does cost more to actually refurbish, renovate and improve an old building like that than it would cost to knock it down and rebuild with something modern and environmentally more eco-efficient. So yeah, I'm really sorry, but the heritage thing, I think we just have to weigh it up, and we need housing. It's in a very prominent area of Bournemouth. It looks shocking. It's not very welcoming for anybody. Nobody is going to want to take it on. No developer is going to want to take it on and try to refurbish it, because it isn't viable. It would cost too much money. It's not practical. So personally, I think the best thing would be to knock it down, sadly. But I think, yeah, it needs to come down. It's horrible. And, you know, that's even not considering the problems with the crime and the drug use and the, you know, squatters or whatever. I'm just talking about how it looks, the fact it's empty, and we need that space. We need the homes.
Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Clements, and I respect we have to conserve things, but it is beyond, and if we don't, something needs to change in order to then create further change, and we can then conserve the area as a whole. I would like to move that we actually propose that we accept and recommend this for development, subject to the Heathlands contribution and an affordable housing contribution. We are going to have the winter gardens built in due course. There's going to be another one there, but we do need housing. We need it. It's town centre based. Parking's not an issue. We have targets to meet, and this is a perfect place to put it. It's going to have effects elsewhere. We don't want Greenland built on this. It just lends itself to that. It's awful. It's ugly. It needs to change. Something's happened. It's not viable to refurbish it. I would like to suggest that we actually recommend this for approval.
So we've got a recommendation. Are either of you seconding this proposal? Right, Councillor Adams seconding.
I would like to. I second.
Or third it. Do you wish to speak as well at this stage, Councillor Adams?
Yes, please. I mean, I've got a friend who lives on St Michael's Road, and I go there semi-often, not for the purposes of the drug dealing and vagrancy. Just thought I'd make that abundantly clear. Allegedly, what I do on a Thursday evening is no one's business. But I mean, in terms of a lot of the roads in a real sorry state, but yet there are some buildings that have been constructed, sort of demolished and rebuilt over the years, and have been done quite sympathetically. Obviously, we need to have sustainable development and regeneration desperately in this area. It's not fair on the people that live there at the moment. I mean, looking at some of the proposals, I think I've written some stuff down, but sorry, I'm just trying to catch up. But I mean, whilst it's not matching, I would argue it's not completely unsympathetic to the area. I think some of the sort of gables and things, it's obviously it's in such a poor condition that anything's got to be better than it is at the moment. I think it is beyond repair, and I think there's a few buildings that need to be taken down. I think the design it's not completely sort of Victorian, but I've it is an improvement, and we as I said, we do need housing. We can secure the sustainable accommodation. I just can't see how it's something that needs to be protected. I think the sight of it is unfair on the residents that live on the road and have to deal with it. And I think the same goes for a few of the buildings on that road. And we're not going to get any regeneration. The crime's going to get worse, and the police can't hold them back forever, because it is the sort of area where there's a few houses that have been converted into dodgy HMOs and have the wrong sort of area where you can. And even if I worry if you didn't do that and tried to push forward something in those, I think there'd be vastly unsuitable properties for anyone. Even not that I've looked internally, but judging from some of the other houses, the way they've been converted hasn't been sympathetically at all. So let's give it a chance to try and bring up an area. So that's why I'm seconding.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, then Councillor Chapman, and I'm going to speak as well. I'm going to get in somewhere.
I'm agreeing with all my fellow councillors, especially Cameron Adams there. It's really useful. And Joe Clements, yes, definitely agree. One thing I would just want to say I really like about this development, and I think we ought to see more of and encourage, is that they've got outside balconies. And I think that's so important, particularly as the climate is now changing. We are becoming warmer, and it's lovely to see properties where there is some balcony space, because they are in quite short supply. So whether it's 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, I think that really makes a difference to living. Being able to open doors, it creates that liminal space for people, and I think that's good for mental health. Yeah, so I would like to promote that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, just before we go to the votes, wanting to raise a couple of things just to make sure members are aware and come to their viewpoints. So in terms of crime and the potential risk development to help reduce that crime, only very limited weight can be given to that. There's no direct relationship between crime figures and whether or not development would go ahead. But also to be clear that the importance of this heritage asset is in relation to itself in a group of those properties and its contribution to the heritage of the area, and obviously with the loss of building, then the value of that aspect in the conservation area would diminish.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the conservation officer on this. I do get, it's an old building that has been around for a very long time and has seen many things through its lifetime. But as has been said, they're very difficult to bring up to standard for heating and and damp, etc. So I'm inclined to agree with the others. However, I would have liked to see a better balance on the number of bedrooms per flat. Quite a low number of 2 beds, which is what we need. But yeah, I'm sort of inclined to agree with everybody else.
Thank you. My main concern, like Councillor Canavan and to some extent Councillor Chapman, is the number of 1-bed flats. Our housing needs are very clearly published. They're in the public domain. It's well known that what we need is 2 and 3 bed properties, far more than 1 bed. But developers keep bringing forward proposals for a majority, and in some cases a vast majority, of 1-bed flats, which is not what's needed. And obviously people will move in because they're desperate to live somewhere, but they are not suitable for families and with children. And what's needed is bigger properties, 2-bed, 3-bed. And a lot's been made of this being a tourist area, which it is. So my fear is, particularly the 1-bed flats, will be snapped up as holiday accommodation. So they won't help the local housing problems at all. They'll just make money for the developers. So I'm torn, because I must admit I'm struggling to find much value in the heritage side, but I'm also not happy with the proposal in terms of the balance of accommodation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. I've got both sides of me wanting to speak. I don't know which needs to come first.
It's a question, really. Is it sensible or possible to propose that we recommend, but with an alteration to the makeup of the internal apartment sizes and bedroom space.
Unfortunately, I mean, obviously we're all aware we have to make decisions in accordance with the development plan, any other material planning considerations. We don't have a policy that specifies a particular mix, so we can't reasonably uphold a reasonable refusal or a requirement for a particular mix of units, unfortunately.
So, any further debate? Doesn't look like it's. Oh,
in terms of conditions, obviously we would have to look to add quite a number of conditions on the, I assume drainage, recycling, transport, sort of highway safety, potential heathlands mitigation, affordable housing, and probably design materials. How do we go about doing that on our things, or can we delegate the wording of those to the officers based on the view of ours? Because I've cheated and got some ideas off of previous applications, so I can have a crack at it, but they're going to be much better and more qualified.
Yes, over to you.
Yeah, so my recommendation would be that we amend the recommendation to obviously grant subject to section 106 and to agree the conditions informatives in consultation with the chair and the head of planning.
I've got some I can send through as an indication, but I don't know how good they are because I've been.
Councillor Slade, and then we'll probably put it to the vote.
I'm happy with the powers be delegated to the head of planning as part of that recommendation.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded and voted that we grant this planning application contrary to officer recommendation. So if you feel it should be granted, will you vote now?
Sorry, can I clarify before we do that? Can I clarify that after this decision has taken, the planning officers in consultation with whoever else will try and firm up these conditions in the way that has been described. I'm not clear about whether we're going to do that.
So, Chair.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, so I think that's the recommendation is to delegate authority to the head of planning to grant permission subject to the agreement of section 106 agreements and conditions and informatives, which will be in consultation with the chair and vice chair. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed the last bit. I'm so sorry.
So, as I said, we'll put it to the vote now. If you wish to approve this application contrary to officer recommendation, please vote now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Those against?
1.
And 1 abstention.
Okay. Okay, so 6.
So that application is now passed with the conditions, the additional conditions, 106 and everything else, as agreed. So thank you very much. That's the end of the business.
Good.
And we'll see you in a month's time. Thank you very much.